Digital disruption is taking place across financial institutions. Now, new technologies are being used to deliver innovative services.
And this is changing the way that banking is done. Here to give his perspective on what's happening and what might happen next, we're joined by Umar Farooq, Head of Channels, Analytics and Innovation for Treasury Services at JP Morgan. Umar, welcome to Sibos TV.
Thank you for having me.
Umar, you're right on the cutting edge. What are the technologies and market forces that are driving disruption in financial services?
I think there's, as it comes to technologies, there's probably three that jump to mind. One is obviously data, big data, as well as artificial intelligence. I think it's really having a fundamental effect on how people perceive their business, how they monetize it, and how they really extract value for their clients. And then I think the second one, frankly, distributed ledger or blockchain is having now an increasingly significant impact on how people are approaching everything from infrastructure to value-added services. And I think the final one, frankly, I would call out is artificial intelligence, APIs and open banking, which are making it more and more possible for us to deliver services in a more integrated way to our clients. And then I think there's obviously a host of other technologies like UI, robotics, et cetera, that are also in play, but the first three are making a very big difference for our clients.
Interestingly, you mentioned blockchain technology there, and that leads quite nicely to a scheme that JP Morgan has pioneered in focusing on payments innovation. So what impact is that having on JP Morgan and, of course, JP Morgan's customers?
I think when you look at IN, which is short for Interbank Information Network, we really came at it from a client point of view. When you think about blockchain technology, there's a lot of what I would call almost quote-unquote frothiness in the market about what it could do. And when we looked at all the applications, we really wanted to hone in on where can it add real value for our clients. And one of the places where we saw inefficiency in information flows was when payments are transferred across jurisdictions. And some, because of usually data inefficiency or missing data, sometimes they get stuck for days at end. And so IN is our solution for that, which is a distributed network across now more than 100 banks, which can exchange information with each other, and those banks can actually resolve those information inefficiencies to make payments flow much better. So it's having a significant impact on our clients in terms of making their payments flow faster, and obviously it's having a big impact on us in terms of providing a better service for our clients.
Similarly, AI is a much heralded technology. What's your view on how you see it actually applying in the banking world?
So AI is a pretty broad term. It goes everything from machine learning, which is pretty much pattern recognition, to what I would call advanced AI. I don't think there's too many applications of advanced AI in banking right now. Everyone's sort of experimenting with it. As far as machine learning is concerned, there are certain areas where it's now being used pretty heavily. For instance, even things like fraud, where ultimately it's a pattern recognition issue, which is you want to see patterns of flows, and when something is outside of that pattern, you know that there is, at least you should make sure that that's not a fraudulent or not a payment that you should stop. So we have machine learning being applied pretty much across the entire stack, everything from client-facing reporting all the way to the back end and fraud, and we're seeing that technology can actually provide much better transparency, performance, as well as efficiency for our clients.
Now, one of the other talking points for banks is open banking, in fact, and those API strategies. So what does that mean in practice for corporate treasury?
I think if you think about corporate treasury, they have traditionally interacted with banks in a few ways. Either they used a portal that was designed by the bank, so it's usually a web-based interface, and the corporates interact with them, or the corporate treasury personnel interact with it, or they have file transfers via host-to-host framework, or they use Swift messages. Increasingly, as corporates evolve, I think they're finding better ways to integrate what the banks bring to them into their actual business flows. So to just give you a very simple example, when someone leaves a corporate, so if someone resigns, the corporate has to make sure that all of their entitlements at a bank are removed. That process today requires an interaction through web or through phone calls or some such mechanism. But what open banking does is, to the extent that we can publish some APIs that can be utilized to make that transaction happen, they can literally integrate that into the HR system. So when a person leaves a corporate, they not only get deleted in that corporate from a point of view of what they can do in the corporate, but they actually get also deleted from our systems. So it makes the entire corporate flow a lot better. And it's you'll see more and more of APIs coming through. We've made a lot of investment in the API area over the last year.
And Umar, JP Morgan has also launched virtual branches and a virtual assistant. How are corporates using these services?
I think those two are actually distinct, but sort of go at the same issue. Again, the client's at the heart. Virtual branch, there were certain jurisdictions in the world where we have a few branches, but the country might be vast. And certain transactions, say tax payments or certain kinds of trade transactions, still require paper in certain countries. And so if you don't have branches in every little town and city, how do you provide a client the ability to actually interact with us, upload documents, download documents, provide all kinds of signatures? So we built this solution for those geographies primarily, and clients are using it very heavily, especially in some of the Asian countries. As far as virtual assistant is concerned, that's it was the first artificial intelligence-driven sort of robot that can interact with our clients and have a conversation, not just respond about one query or a point in time, but you can actually go back and forth and keeps the context in mind. And I think it was the first one ever done for large corporates in the world, and we've been expanding it. We actually think that over time, more and more of our clients will probably interact with us using unstructured methods. When they want to ask a question, they don't want to click through 5 screens. They can just type a question and they can get the answer right away.
I mean, these are fascinating developments, but what are the much bigger challenges that banks are going to face as they adopt these new technologies?
I think one of the biggest challenges is that these technologies are moving at a very rapid pace. They evolve quickly, and frankly, the people who are really good at utilizing these is a new generation of very technologically savvy product development people as well as technologists. And I think there's always been a war for talent, because now you're not competing against banks, you're frankly competing against the cutting edge fintechs and Silicon Valley and all of those companies. And I think that's where something like our brand comes in handy, because JP Morgan is frankly bigger than most technology companies. We have about 50,000 technology personnel across the bank. And we've been bringing more and more of this talent in. So I think that's one. The second thing is speed. So speed of execution at a bank, as you may be aware, is always been challenged, not because we are slow, but because there's lots of regulatory requirements. There's lots of compliance and controls issues we have to take into account. And we are all having to learn and redesign those processes so that they can deliver in this, sort of the brave new world.
Okay, so busy times at JP Morgan. But Umar, Farooq, thank you so much for joining us here on Sibos TV. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Excellent.